For many centuries, London was a dangerous place. It was a magnet for the very worst kind of people. Jack the Ripper dominated the headlines. But he wasn't the only killer around. Murder was afoot. The fear of death was everywhere. But police had their work cut out to track the culprits down. In this series, we'll be investigating some of the city's most notorious and intriguing crimes.
The female defendant.
Sexual intrigue, vicious murder, as well as the latest technology, fed the nation's insatiable desire for gruesome stories of London's dark side. Edwardian London saw great changes in the city. The capital was the financial center of the world, and a whole new era was being ushered in. But, at the same time, some rather unsavory characters were making their way here. Fortunately, the Metropolitan Police was changing dramatically and had a whole new set of methods to track them down and, just as vitally, to convict them in court.
You had a system called Bertillonage, after Alphonse Bertillon. How this worked was that cards were made out and a criminal was measured. Length of his fingers, size of his head, size of his ears, size of his body. Well, you can imagine putting all these down on cards and then trying to get some form of identification when you've got thousands of cards to compare was almost impossible. So fingerprints are going to change all that in 1905.
The first murder solved in Britain by fingerprint. Murder in Deptford High Street. There was a thumbprint on the cash box, and that led to the conviction of the Stratton brothers. And this led to an almost sort of scientific approach, which started to build Scotland Yard's international reputation.
The new police force and the realm of forensic science would be tested on terrible crimes that were to take place in London. Two of the most notorious were in Camden Town.
Camden at this time is described as being very noisy and dirty. Lots of lorries, horse-drawn vehicles, pubs, and the common people who go to them.
Camden has always been a place that attracted a wide variety of characters. Everyone from the bare-knuckle fighter Tom Sayer to the great novelist Charles Dickens moved to this part of North London. In the early 20th century, though, the local community in Camden would be shocked to the core by two brutal killings. The first, in 1907, became known as the Camden Town murder. It was a crime that harked back to the time of Jack the Ripper 20 years earlier, because it involved the murder of a prostitute named Emily Dimmock, who had her throat slashed in her home by a client. Her body was discovered the next day by her partner, and the story grabbed the public's attention. The case aroused the interest of the artist Walter Sickert. He painted a series of works on the Camden Town murder. A man named Robert Wood was apprehended and charged with the crime, based on some writing on a postcard found in the victim's room. But a brilliant defense by the famous barrister Edward Marshall Hall would see him found innocent in court. The case remains unsolved. Just a couple of years later, though, Edward Marshall Hall would again be called to the defense, this time in the case of Dr. Crippen.
Crippen was an American, trained to be a doctor. He came to England, but his medical qualifications weren't recognised. And so he went to work for a patent company dealing with various medicines.
The dividing line between patent medicines and being a quack doctor is a bit blurred. But nevertheless, I'm sure there'd be many people who took what Dr. Crippen gave them and were very grateful. He became friendly with Cora Makamotsky. She wanted to be a singer. She used to perform on the music hall stage, which was very popular in those days, and she went by the name of Belle Elmore.
She wanted to sing grand opera, but she didn't have the voice or the talent.
The story of Harvey Hawley Crippen remains one of the most enduring crimes of the 20th century. Some key mysteries surround the case, which have puzzled amateur sleuths for years. This is a sordid and absorbing tale of love lives gone horribly wrong. It all begins when Dr. Crippen and his wife Cora move into number 39 Hilldrop Crescent in Camden.
Bright and stylish girl, you see, belle of good society, not too strict but rather free, yet as right can be, never forward, never bold, not too shy and not too cold, but the very thing I'm told that in your arms you'd like to fold. What do you think, darling?
It's nice.
Oh, you know I hate that word.
So, I had a meeting with Mrs. Curnow today. Actually, I decided. Mrs. Curnow was real sorry. I've decided I'm leaving Munyon's. Would you mind? Munyon's just isn't right for me anymore. It's time I focused my energies where it matters, on my other ventures, like we talked about.
The Harvard tooth pullers?
Yale. It's Yale. And you know what? The dentistry is going from strength to strength. In fact, with a little capital investment, a couple of £100. Cora.
Belle, darling.
It's my money too.
Ta-ra-ra bum-dee-ay, ta-ra-ra bum-dee-ay,
Cora.
ta-ra-ra bum-dee-ay.
You're my wife.
Ta-ra-ra bum-dee-ay, ta-ra-ra bum-dee-ay, ta-ra-ra.
Crippen, besides working for a patent medicine company, also worked for a death centre. And it's there he met a young typist called Ethel Leneve. The two of them began an affair.
Crippen had been promising her one day it would be better than this. All of a sudden in February, according to her landlady, she cheered up.
Good morning, Dr. Crippen.
I want you to move in with me.
What about your wife? He used to buy me dinner after work. I think at first he was just avoiding going home. He used to say he and Cora, his wife, had drifted apart in sympathy. Then our sneaking off became rather a pleasant routine.
Dr. Crippen was keeping up his routine well. He and his wife Cora entertained their theatrical friends, among whom were the Martinettis, at their home in Hilldrop Crescent.
Mr. Martinetti was a sort of an aging music hall artist, and Mrs. Martinetti was on a sort of a ladies' club for music hall artists.
Hello. Come in.
Oh, I do so long for spring. smells divine in here. Where's Belle?
Let me take your coat.
Oh, don't mind him.
Excuse me. Well, at least if I collapse, I'll know there's a doctor in the house.
Of course I'm married, and we all have our little dramas from time to time. But I thought they got on well.
I'm looking into the wings. I can't even see Lily now.
No.
She's run off.
It's your worst nightmare as a performer.
Just before her entrance, I could not believe it.
Oh, no one in the audience even noticed.
Yes, I'm quite sure you were wonderful.
Oh, thank you, darling.
Isn't he a dear?
So, who's for a game of whist? Oh, certainly, yes.
We stayed until around 1:30. But Paul was still under the weather, and darling Belle suggested that we stay the night. That was so like her. But I insisted on getting him home. I didn't want to bother her. I just wish we'd stayed. But I suppose he would have found his cue another night.
Crippen made sure he put on this show of love and affection when the Martinetti couple came over to 39 Hilldrop Crescent for dinner. But it was all a mask. The events that would unfold would see one of the most notorious killers of the 20th century flee across the Atlantic to Canada. With him would be his mistress, Ethel Leneve, who had disguised herself as a boy. The desperate duo would be pursued by one of Scotland Yard's finest, who was determined to bring them in. Camden, January the 31st, 1910. In a townhouse at 39 Hilldrop Crescent, Dr. Crippen and his wife were joined by the Martinettis for dinner, followed by an enjoyable game of whist. The Martinettis had been musical performers, just like Belle Elmore, and they left at around 1:30 a.m. And the story of Dr. Crippen began.
You've been so sweet.
Nobody knows for sure what happened that night. The supposition is Dr. Crippen murdered Cora Crippen by giving her something to drink.
There are two theories. A shot was heard, and he may have shot her. But in the body was found traces of hyoscine.
Hyoscine was used to calm mental patients in very small amounts. Dr. Crippen had ordered a substantial amount of hyoscine from the local chemist.
The truth is, we simply don't know what happened next. A large dose of hyoscine can have varied effects, especially when mixed with alcohol. Belle likely became frantic, delirious even. Some neighbors reported hearing gunshots and screams coming from the direction of Crippen's house that night, so maybe Crippen panicked and shot her. Those reports were unconfirmed, however, so it's possible that she simply fell unconscious, slipped into a coma, and died. What is certain is that Belle was never seen again after that night. The next morning, Crippen went to work as usual, and when he returned home, the rest of his plan was put into action.
To the Committee of the Music Hall Ladies Guild. Dear friends, forgive me a hasty letter and any inconvenience I may cause you. But I have just had the bad news of the illness of a near relative. And at only a few hours' notice, I am obliged to go to America. Yours faithfully, Belle Elmore.
Dr. Crippen put it out that Cora had been called back to America. Ethel moved in to Dr. Crippen's house.
And soon Ethel Lenneve is seen wearing Mrs. Crippen's furs, she's wearing Mrs. Crippen's jewellery.
Crippen may have thought that all his problems had vanished in an instant. But thankfully, Belle was better liked by her friends than by her husband. Despite Crippen's hopes, Belle's friends had not forgotten her.
It just isn't like Belle. I mean, not even a note.
You're right. The thing is, she's been unwell. Yeah, I just heard from my people this morning. Her lungs, so you see...
Oh, the poor thing. And for a singer too, how terrible.
I don't know that it's as bad as all that. She said it wasn't.
So, you have heard from her?
What?
Belle told you that.
Yeah, but... Well, she's up in the mountains. Out in California, the wild's up there, so, you know...
Well, you send her our best wishes. She'll be back in fine voice soon, I'm certain. Our Belle's a fighter.
Oh yeah, she sure is.
All of a sudden, Dr. Crippen decided that the story he had concocted of his wife's urgent trip to Los Angeles was no longer sufficient on its own. He told her friends that she'd been taken seriously ill herself and was not expected to survive. Then he sent a telegram to Mrs. Martinetti to inform her of Cora's death and cremation. Suspicions were beginning to grow amongst Belle's friends. One friend who noticed her disappearance was the famous strongwoman Kate Williams, who went by the stage name Vulcana. Not somebody you'd want to be on the wrong side of.
Her act in the music hall was as a strong woman lifting great weights of barbells and that sort of thing. Vulcana came back from America. They had looked to try and catch up with what had happened to Cora and so on, but had drawn a complete blank. So they discussed it amongst their friends and then went to Scotland Yard to express their doubts.
The London community with which Dr. Crippen and his wife had become friendly had been rocked to the very core just over a decade earlier. The well-known actor William Terrace was stabbed outside the Adelphi Theatre. His killer was another actor, Richard Archer Prince, who had been his friend. Prince was declared insane and sent to Broadmoor Asylum. His sentence angered the theatrical community. Sir Henry Irving went so far as to say, "Terrace was an actor, so his murderer will not be executed." The William Terrace murder, though, had been a relatively straightforward affair for the London police. The Crippen mystery would be far more challenging. But fortunately, a man called Walter Dew was on the case. He was no stranger to shocking murder, having been one of the team that tried to capture Jack the Ripper 20 years earlier.
Dew was only a young policeman at the time of the Jack the Ripper murders. He joined 1882, about 6 years before the murders. And he said that it talked about the tension in the area, and you'd only got to say Jack the Ripper and you could get an explosive incident. And when some lunatic runs down the street shouting, "I am Jack the Ripper, I am Jack the Ripper," immediately a lynch mob is formed. Dew and other policemen grab hold of this lunatic, have barricade themselves in a house, waiting for reinforcements, while outside a lynch mob is howling to get hold of this person and string them up on the nearest lamppost.
In the case of Dr. Crippen, Walter Dew's first move was to head over to Hilldrop Crescent to get some answers to Cora's disappearance.
He's at work?
And you are his...
Housekeeper. If you come back later, he'll be here. You talk to him then. You should come back.
We would very much like to speak with him now, Miss Leneve.
He's at work? I could telephone.
Where is it your employer works?
The police would have their work cut out to bring him to justice. The case would be a sensation for press and public. Crippen had dispatched his wife, set up an elaborate story to promote his innocence, and moved his mistress, Ethel Leneve, into the marital home. But Inspector Dew had grown very suspicious. He made Ethel take him to see Dr. Crippen before she had a chance to telephone ahead and warn of the inspector's impending arrival. This time, though, he was to get his man. Dr. Crippen had murdered his wife, Cora, and moved his mistress, Ethel, into their house at 39 Hilldrop Crescent, Camden. He had concocted an elaborate story, which began to slowly unravel once Inspector Dew started digging.
And she died in Los Angeles, is that correct?
Must be 3 months back now. Gosh, yeah, March 23rd.
And you're certain of that, Dr. Crippen?
I think I would remember a thing like that, don't you?
It's just the authorities there have no record of your wife's death.
Well, that is strange. I can't... Gosh, I suppose I had better tell the truth. My wife, my wife isn't dead. She left me. I feel a real fool, let me tell you. You think advertising in the States might help? You know, a reward for information, that sort of thing?
It might.
I'm just keen to help, you know, however I can, officer.
Inspector. You don't jump to the conclusion murder has been committed merely because a wife has disappeared and her husband has told lies about it. But he had lied.
Crippen was clearly spooked and decided that the best course of action would be to leave the country with Ethel immediately.
Certain people with no knowledge of police procedure and even less of the law blamed me for letting Crippen go. I ought to have arrested him, they said. But there had been no shred of evidence against him. It's futile to talk of arresting a man until you know there has been a crime.
Walter Dew made further inquiries over the weekend and called again at Hilldrop Crescent on the Monday morning to find both Crippen and Ethel and Eve were no longer there.
The neighbours haven't seen them, sir, but we spoke to one of his colleagues. He says the doctor was at his office Saturday morning. Crippen gave him £2, told him to go and buy a boy's suit, tie and braces, a brown bowler hat and size 5 boots.
What size shoe do you suppose Miss Leneve takes? I want descriptions of both of them circulated to all ports, domestic and foreign.
Yes, sir.
My quarry had gone, and the manner of his going pointed to guilt. Here was the real clue. His decision was a sudden one. Of that I felt convinced. He was scared.
As instructions were sent out to track down Dr. Crippen and his mistress Ethel Leneve, who had both suddenly disappeared, Inspector Walter Dew made further searches at the Crippen household. The first searches of the house showed no sign of Cora, and no evidence of a struggle or any kind of disturbance. The police were persistent, certain that Crippen wouldn't have fled so quickly for no reason. Eventually their persistence paid off. The police made a grim discovery in the cellar. Human remains covered in quicklime. The bones, head, limbs, and sex organs had been cut away.
The skull, arms, various bones are missing, and there's just this mangled pieces of flesh.
They called in the expert pathologists from Imperial College. They made tests on the flesh and found that it contained traces of hyoscine.
Large amounts of hyoscine were extracted. Its identity was confirmed by being tested on a cat. Apparently, a cat's eyes dilate in the presence of hyoscine. Belle Elmore could be identified only by a small piece of flesh from her abdomen. It bore a scar consistent with an ovurectomy that she had undergone.
The pathologist was a young man called Bernard Spilsbury. He contradicted the other specialists who had been called in, and he'd found this scar tissue. The significance is that Mrs. Martinetti has seen a scar on Cora Crippen's abdomen. Apparently she'd had an operation. This becomes very relevant to the case.
Some of the parts of the flesh were wrapped up in what turned out to be, was identified as Crippen's pyjamas. And it then turned into a murder hunt.
A warrant was put out for Dr. Crippen and Ethel Leneve. False sightings were reported all over the country, but nobody knew for sure where they were.
This case caused enormous interest in the newspapers. It was an American doctor having an affair with his typist. It involved the music hall and a singer. So there was this great publicity, and lots of people came up with various leads on where Dr. Crippen might have gone to, including places on the continent.
The most promising lead came from a quite unexpected source. A ship on the Atlantic, the SS Montrose, that was headed to Canada. Its captain, Henry Kendall, had only 20 passengers traveling in second class on his ship, and he had become extremely suspicious of 2 of them.
It wasn't a very good way for them to have been anonymous.
They're using aliases. Ethel Lenave had a haircut. She's disguised as Crippen's son.
The boat was equipped with the new Marconi wireless telegraph. So Kendall actually used this telegram to relay his suspicions to Scotland Yard.
Henry Kendall, captain of the SS Montrose, sent the following message to his head office in Liverpool. Montrose, 130 miles west of Lizard. Have strong suspicion that Crippen, London cellar murderer, and accomplice are amongst saloon passengers. Moustache shaved off, growing beard. Accomplice dressed as a boy, voice, manner, and build undoubtedly a girl. Kendall. Walter Dew had a tough decision to make. Whether to trust these unconfirmed reports by telegraph from a ship in the middle of the Atlantic. He decided he had to act and boarded another ship, the much faster Laurentic, that was due to arrive in Canada before the Montrose.
What made it a sensational case was that Dew used the wireless telegraph to send reports back to England. These were going in the newspapers, and Crippen, of course, with Ethel Lenave, were completely unaware of this going on, so the press were having a wonderful time with all this information.
Dew's ship raced across the Atlantic, landing in Canada 2 days before the Montrose was due to arrive. The murder of Cora Crippen and the flight of her husband were now a worldwide sensation. The press on both sides of the Atlantic were desperate for any detail about the case. Murder, adultery, theatre, technology. It was the perfect story. A large crowd gathered in Quebec to greet the arriving SS Montrose. Dew put on the uniform of a pilot officer and was rowed out to the ship accompanied by 2 officers of the Quebec City Police. Forewarned of his arrival, the ship's captain greeted him on the bridge and accompanied him to a private cabin. There, Dew waited until the Canadian policeman could bring him the man suspected of being the missing murderer. Dew could only wait.
Walter Dew, dressed up as a ship's captain, boarded the Montrose, spoke to the captain, and of course there wasn't really any doubt that it was Crippen and Ethel. They were then returned on the Laurentic's sister ship, the Magentic, back to Liverpool. Ethel Lenave was really pleased to be able to get out of boys' clothes, and she said Walter Dew was very kind because he allowed her to send out for some proper woman's clothes, and at Walter Dew's suggestion she got this hat with a veil so that her face would be protected from the press cameras.
On their return to London, Dr. Crippen and Ethel Lenave would face the full force of British justice. They would also find a public thirsting for every detail of this sensational murder, and a song written in their dubious honour. Dr. Crippen killed Belle Elmore, ran away with Miss Lenave, right across the ocean blue, followed by Inspector Dew. Ships ahoy, naughty boy! Dr. Crippen and Ethel Leneve were now back in London. They had attempted to flee to Canada on the ship SS Montrose, with Ethel assuming, rather oddly, the identity of a young boy. They had almost got away with it, but were thwarted by Inspector Walter Dew, who was awaiting their arrival in Canada with handcuffs at the ready in order to bring them back to London. Crippen was put on trial for the murder of his wife at the Old Bailey on October the 18th, 1910.
Hawley, Crippen, you are indicted and also charged on the coroner's inquisition with the wilful murder of Cora Crippen on the 1st of February last. Are you guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty, my lord.
Dr. Crippen was in many ways a modest man. In others, he was egotistical. I shall always believe he was vain enough to think he had committed the perfect crime.
Expert opinion was provided by both the defense and the prosecution, and it often conflicted. One side would say that the carving up of the body found under the cellar required great expertise and practice, while the other side would say, well, anybody could do that with a bit of medical training. There were also conflicting arguments about the piece of flesh. Did it actually have the scar that Belle Elmore was known to have from an operation?
It was like a Y-shaped scar, some of which could be a crease, other parts of which was surgical.
It was folded over, and there was argument whether the scar was in fact a fold of flesh or whether it was a scar. Spilsbury convinced the jury that it was a scar.
That scar was consistent with an operation. Her sister travelled over from America and gave evidence at the Old Bailey to this effect.
The interesting thing is, in recent years, a sort of DNA has been done on the remains. Cora's DNA doesn't match up any of the surviving family.
DNA evidence suggested that the flesh was male.
All of which adds to the controversy. At the time of the Crippen trial, though, the evidence presented to the court was groundbreaking, and people were going to be naturally hesitant about accepting it. But in Bernard Spilsbury, the prosecution had an expert who was going to change the face of forensic science.
Bernard Spilsbury gave evidence about the hyacinth, and actually it was the first famous case in which Bernard Spilsbury had given this expert evidence as a pathologist. He became very eminent in the next 30 years and became very famous indeed.
Crippen had a formidable court opponent in Bernard Spilsbury, but he did have Edward Marshall Hall, known as the Great Defender, on his team. Hall had successfully defended Robert Wood 3 years earlier in the case of the Camden Town murder. After some discussion, however, as the trial approached, Hall decided not to lead Crippen's defense. Crippen was in real trouble. The prosecution was led by Richard Muir, who secured conviction in the Stratton brothers case, the first men to be convicted of murder on fingerprint evidence. When Muir was appointed prosecutor, Crippen is reported to have said, "I wish it had been anyone else. I fear the worst." Crippen was damned by the actions he took both before and after Belle's disappearance.
On the early morning of the 1st of February, you were left alone in your house with your wife. Is that correct?
Yes.
She was alive?
Yes.
And well?
She was.
Do you know of anybody in the world who has seen your wife alive since?
I do not.
Do you know of anybody who has received a letter from her since?
I do not.
Do you know of anyone who could swear they ever saw your wife leave that house alive?
I told Mr. Dew all the facts.
But you have made no inquiries.
I have made no inquiries.
It would be most important for your defense if someone could be found who saw your wife after the Martinettis did. You do realize that?
I do.
And you have made no inquiries?
I have made no inquiries.
In my whole dealings with him, I saw nothing which by the wildest stretch of the imagination could suggest a capacity for so terrible a crime. But I never entertained a doubt about his guilt.
The jury took just 27 minutes to reach their verdict. Guilty. Ethel Leneve was tried separately as an accessory after the fact, but in truth, the prosecutor's heart was not in it. The case was a slender one, and she was acquitted.
I think Ethel may have known what had happened. I don't think she could have been that completely innocent. That she foolishly walked around wearing Mrs. Crippen's jewellery and Mrs. Crippen's furs. She must have had knowledge of the murder. I can't believe that she took these things and didn't ask how or why they'd been left behind.
It was an accident, killing Cora. It must have been. I would still marry him.
They have their rules. I won't be getting you in trouble again.
You look well.
Yeah, they're taking care of me. Darling, you have been my one comfort all these years. My one comfort. God bless you, my darling.
Crippen appealed against his death sentence to the then Home Secretary Winston Churchill. Churchill went over the case in detail, but decided against commuting the sentence to life imprisonment. He did, however, allow this final personal meeting between Crippen and Ethel at Pentonville Prison before the execution. Crippen was hanged on the 23rd of November, 1910. He may be long dead, but fascination for the man lives on. His story has been retold many times in varying literary and film adaptations. The case was a sensation in its day, but unanswered questions remain. What really happened in that house that night? How much did Ethel really know? Occasional attempts are made to prove Crippen's innocence, but there can be little doubt of the guilt of the killer of Camden Town. For many centuries, London was a dangerous place. It was a magnet for the very worst kind of people. Jack the Ripper dominated the headlines, but he wasn't the only killer around. Murder was afoot. The fear of death was everywhere. But police had their work cut out to track the culprits down. In this series, we'll be investigating some of the country's most notorious and intriguing crimes.
Female defendant.
Sexual intrigue, vicious murder, as well as the latest technology, fed the nation's insatiable desire for gruesome stories of London's dark side. Sunday, the 31st of May, 1953. The coronation of Elizabeth II was just days away. Visitors from all across the world were filling London, and the city was in the mood for a party. It could do with one. Many districts still bore the scars of the Blitz. Others were shabby with post-war austerity. And memories were fresh of the great smog that had cloaked London the previous December. The freak weather event had trapped filthy air over the city and killed thousands.
London was getting ready for the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. So the newspapers were, of course, full of all those royal events.
This was when the whole country was excited, focused on the coronation, which was moving towards a whole new era, because you had a young queen, you had the hope of a new Elizabethan age, you had the hope that finally we were moving away from the austerities of war.
England was coming out of just about the Depression. Rationing was still in force, but it was lessening. More and more things were becoming available.
There was a great sense of jubilation. It was party time, and I have to say I remember it because I just entered my teens, and I can remember all the fun and things that were going on.
The country was enjoying an extended spell of warm and dry weather. In the West London town of Teddington, the public swimming pool was packed, and down by the river, dozens of young people had set up camp in a vast, undeveloped area of meadows and gravel pits.
Teddington Lock is the point where the Thames, having travelled 96 miles, stops being a tidal river. This is where it all changes at Teddington Lock.
the towpath and the banks. There were a whole series of people camping at a weekend.
Campsites like that up and down the Thames were extremely popular. It was a way of breaking monotony and routine.
It was freedom they were getting now after the restrictions which there had been during the war and certainly for years afterwards.
Why not take what seems to have been an absolutely beautiful weekend to go and do some camping?
Among the revellers that warm Sunday evening were 3 teenage boys. The friends had camped by the river a few hundred yards from Teddington Lock. They were later joined by 2 local girls, Barbara Songhurst and Christine Reed.
These were just good-hearted, cheerful, modern young women enjoying life, looking forward to the coronation. Barbara was going to appear in a bathing beauty contest to mark the coronation.
They came from working class families. It was a sort of fairly local community. They had been friends for some length of time. They were around together in the cafes and cinemas a great deal of the time.
They were church-going, they were virtuous, they were respectable, modern young girls.
On Sunday the 31st of May, the girls decided to take advantage of the clement weather and set off on their bikes toward the rural area around Teddington Lock.
Barbara was staying with Christine, and one of them had known 3 boys who were setting up a tent in a camping site on the river bank, and the girls took their bicycles out, rode over to see them.
There'd obviously been a lot of playing around. The boys had hidden the girls' bicycles. They'd been chasing and they'd been kissing, and it was teenage fun.
The girls came back to Christine's for lunch, rode out again, came back for tea, and rode out again in the evening.
The warm, bright night was enticing. The teenagers left the Reed house again at 8 p.m. and cycled back to the boys' camp by the river. They stayed there until almost midnight. Then, with a cheerful goodbye, they cycled off into the darkness.
See you tomorrow. See ya.
Night. Night. Christine? You all right? Christine?
On the 1st of June, men from the Port of London Authority arrived at Teddington to perform repairs on the river embankment. They were working 800 yards downstream of the lock. At 8:15 a.m., they spotted something in the water. It was the body of a teenage girl. Police examination found she'd been the victim of a savage attack. She'd been struck over the head with an axe and stabbed repeatedly in the chest. The girl had also been sexually assaulted before her body was dumped in the river. The victim was Barbara Songhurst.
The body was noticed floating in the river by a passing cyclist who cast his eye across the river and saw something strange, realised that it was a body, raised the alarm and brought the police in.
She'd been terribly assaulted and battered and raped, and of course that then started off a murder hunt.
Detective Superintendent Herbert Hannam of Scotland Yard opened a murder investigation. Bert Hannam was a Londoner. He was a short man, but stiff-backed and broad-shouldered. He was an imposing figure all the same. There was something aristocratic in his bearing, which he enhanced with dapper suits and smart gloves. Press and colleagues nicknamed him the Count.
The investigation started with Herbert Hannam, Detective Superintendent from Scotland Yard, very experienced detective.
Hannam said he was going to search the river and wanted it dammed, and apparently, according to the Daily Express, 20,000 people came to watch.
The murder scene was soon found. Teddington Lock. Blood stained the gravel of the towpath. There was more splashed over the grass and soaked into the earth nearby. Hannam had no doubt. This was where the young woman was attacked. Scattered in the wild undergrowth beyond the footpath, they found first one pair of women's shoes, but then another. Police were no doubt that these belonged to Christine Reed. 2 days later, Christine's bike was recovered from the Thames. It would be another 4 days, however, before Christine herself would be found. On the 6th of June, a week after the murders, the police team dragging the river reached Glover's Island. It was there, 2 miles downstream from Teddington Lock, that Christine's body was discovered. Like Barbara, she too had suffered blunt head injuries. She had been stabbed over 10 times and brutally raped as she died. The violence of the attacks shocked even experienced police. Chief Inspector Hannam's investigation soon became one of the largest murder hunts England had seen for years. The press, fed by twice-daily police briefings, followed every development. The search involved dogs, mine detectors, and draining part of the river. But no trace of the murder weapon was found, and Barbara's bicycle remained missing. Police feared the killer had fled abroad. The press speculated he would soon strike again. A week after the gruesome murder, a 49-year-old woman was walking her dogs alone in Windsor Great Park when she was grabbed by a man. He told her he had a knife and knew how to use it. He tried to drag her into the bushes, but she struggled. Her attacker gave up and fled the scene on a bicycle. The woman later described to the police the powerfully built young man who had assaulted her.
The News of the World put up a £1,000 reward for information. It must have been a local man. It was a man who was an expert knife thrower. Also, he had a cleft chin, and this was starting to match up with the identification of the woman who'd been raped.
It's not just the police who are instituting their inquiries, going house to house. It's the reporters doing it as well. So they are interrogating all the young men of the area, saying, who do you think did it? Who do you think did it? That's where one of them is prompted in to say, well, if you're looking for a suspect, the kind of person I would expect is that chap there. He's a bad lot.
The officers found the man, as promised, on Oxshott Heath. His name was Alfred Whiteway. He was 22 years old. The police asked him to accompany them for questioning. They placed Whiteway alone in the back of the car and drove him to Kingston Police Station. He was searched and questioned. The questioning came to nothing. Whiteway was released. But he would soon come to the attention of Herbert Hannam and was hauled in and questioned again, this time by Hannam himself.
I'll save you the time. When that job was done, I was with my wife.
What time was that? The job?
11, wasn't it? I read it in the paper.
Well, tell me more about it then.
Well, all I can tell you is that I was indoors with the missus until 11:30, so it couldn't be me now, could it?
How do you know you were indoors until 11:30?
I know I was. I talked about it with the wife.
You talked about it with her?
Yeah, she'll tell you.
Why were the two of you discussing your whereabouts?
'Cause she asked me.
You said you were with her. Were you not together?
Yeah.
Then why did she ask you where you were?
I don't know, do I?
Whiteway came from an impoverished background. He was born in London on the 21st of June 1931. His mother was a domestic servant. His father would die of cancer when he was just 14. From a young age, Whiteway had trouble with the law. As a teenager, he appeared repeatedly before juvenile court and was sent to a reform school near Swindon. But his poor behavior continued there, with the headmaster describing his conduct as most unsatisfactory.
We would describe it as a very poor household. I think he'd got 8 brothers and sisters, one of whom the police reports describe as mentally defective.
He was very poorly educated, and the suspicion must be that that was because either he had some kind of learning difficulties which were not identified, or that he was inattentive, disinclined to learn. He was certainly not interested in reading or anything like that.
After a stint in prison for theft in 1948, Whiteway found work in construction. Fellow labourers remembered his great strength. They said he could climb scaffolding using his arms alone. Others recalled his temper and his obsession with knives.
Throwing axes, machetes, hatchets, whatever came to hand, gave him a status that he was never going to have without it.
He's married to a girl called Nellie. He'd apparently seen her more or less in the street and followed her and started chatting her up. Her mother, very sensibly, didn't approve of Whiteway at all. He was apparently a silent person, and what they did was they deliberately got pregnant. So mother would be forced to allow her to get married. She wouldn't allow him in the house. So they sat on the step, or if mother went out, he came in, and the relationship was consummated with sex in the alley.
By May 1953, Whiteway was a married man with a little girl not yet 2 and a second child on the way. He did not live with his wife and child, however. His in-laws disapproved of him, and he was forced to live with his mother, uncle and siblings in a cramped, terraced house on Sydney Street in Teddington. It was less than a mile from the scene of the double murder. There was something about Whiteway's unusual domestic setup which prompted Hannam to dig a little deeper into his supposed movements on the night of the murders.
So, you left your wife's home at 11:30 p.m. and then cycled to your mother's?
Yeah.
Which way did you go?
Usual way. Over Kingston Bridge, Sandy Lane.
Did anyone see you leave your wife's house?
No.
Did anyone see you on the bridge?
No.
Did anyone see you at Sandy Lane?
Look, no one saw me until I got home, alright?
Of course. It was late. But someone did see you when you got home then?
Yeah, my Uncle Charlie.
He'll be able to confirm that, will he?
Yeah. I got in just before 12. He'll know. He looked at the clock.
Very well.
There was no rush to secure a confession. Whiteway was being held on remand for the assault in Windsor Park, and he had already admitted the violent rape of a teenage girl earlier that year. Hannam compared Whiteway's alibi with statements given by his wife and mother-in-law. There were countless discrepancies. Whiteway's account of his movements on the night of the murders was falling apart. In the summer of 1953, police in London were investigating a double murder. 2 teenage girls had been sexually assaulted and killed on the towpath at Teddington Lock. Their bodies were thrown into the river, where they were found days later. The police's prime suspect was Alfred Whiteway. He was being held in custody on charges of sexual assault, and his story as to his whereabouts on the night of the murder was just not adding up. Chief Inspector Hannam was slowly but surely building a case against Whiteway.
What were you wearing that night?
A shirt, gabardine trousers, the ones the police took, the green ones.
What else?
My rain jacket. And these shoes.
We'll have to take a look at those too.
While the interrogation of Whiteway continued, police, along with the pathology team, were building up a criminal profile and identified that their suspect would have had a keen interest in knives and possibly a talent for throwing them. This theory was consistent with the wounds suffered by both Barbara Songhurst and Christine Reed.
There were wounds on her skull which indicate that he used the axe. He proceeded to rape both his victims and subsequently stab them.
They were stabbed and they were both axed. There were stab wounds in the back, and this led to a theory that he had thrown the knife at Barbara.
Possibly both girls were murdered because Whiteway recognised Barbara Songhurst and thought that she might identify him. She was working as a chemist's assistant in a local shop, so possibly that's where she had seen him or he had seen her.
We have to speculate that Alfie realised he had miscalculated, that he hadn't stopped a completely unknown girl, that she had a companion, and that companion was known to him. And more than that, she knew and would be able to identify him. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It was the sexual assaults on the victims which led Hannam to Whiteway. A series of rapes and attempted rapes had plagued the area at the time. Whiteway had been identified as the perpetrator and charged by a separate police unit. On learning of Whiteway's crimes, Hannam had decided to question him about the murders. After already several attempts at trying to crack Whiteway, Hannam could not have imagined how tough he would be to convict. Further interviews followed on the 3rd, 8th and 15th of July, and everyone Whiteway denied involvement in the murders. His home was searched, but no trace of the murder weapons was found. Hannam was sure he had his man, but he still didn't have the evidence he needed to be sure of a conviction.
Mrs. Hannam. He has been moved now. He's at Brixton. We're waiting on the test results first. Yes. Yes, sir. Precisely. Come in. Well, if there's a semen match, if there's blood on the shoes, well, then I think everything adds up. My apologies, may I call you back? Thank you.
Just came for us, sir. You won't believe where it's been.
Hannam was convinced he had the murder weapon, but to be sure, it was sent away for forensic investigation, a lengthy process in those days. The circumstances of how the axe was found, however, would negate any hard evidence to link it to the attack.
The axe is a really terrible story of neglect and misconduct.
By that time, the police had discovered that they actually had the murder weapon, but they didn't know they had the murder weapon. After being arrested on suspicion of being a rapist, Alfie seems to have stuck the axe under the seat in the police car.
Police were distracted in the front of the car. They hadn't searched him properly.
He somehow took it out from his overalls and hid it. A police officer did actually find it and put it in his locker, and the significance of this axe was not apparent for quite a few days.
The police officer went off sick and took it home when he came back and used it to chop wood, and he blunted it very substantially. And it's only about a week after that someone starts making inquiries. He says, "Oh, I've got the axe at home. I'll bring it in." And I think it's right to say he had his knuckles wrapped very sharply.
While the axe was being tested, Hannam continued with his hard line of interrogation to elicit a confession.
Do you know where these girls were murdered, Mr. Whiteway? Mr. Whiteway?
Look, I'm keeping my bloody mouth shut.
You seem afraid, Alfred.
I'm not letting you lot pin this one on me.
You had nothing to do with it. What's there to be afraid of?
Because I know what you bloody coppers are like. Yeah, I'll go any distance to get a bit from a girl, but not that far. You're wasting your time. Bloke that did that job is mad.
Whiteway's clothing had been sent for forensic testing. By modern standards, this was basic. Although the structure of DNA had been discovered that year by Francis Crick, James Watson and Rosalind Franklin, it would be decades before genetic profiling could help police investigators. What could be detected in 1953, however, was the presence of blood. And it was blood which would become crucial in the investigation of the Towpath murders. But would it be enough? Hannam would find that in constructing a watertight case against Whiteway, his ethics would be tested, and police conduct would come into close scrutiny. Chief Inspector Hannam was frustrated. His investigation into the murders of Barbara Songhurst and Christine Reed had been a long and exhausting one. Now, at least he had a suspect in custody, Alfred Whiteway, a 22-year-old labourer who lived less than a mile from the murder scene. There was no doubt Whiteway was a violent predator. He had already confessed to attacking other women. But there was no direct evidence tying him to the double murder. The axe, mislaid by Kingston police, was now near useless as evidence. The knife used in the attack had still not been found, and no witnesses placed Whiteway at the scene of the crime. Hannam knew the case was a weak one. What he needed was a confession. By this time, Whiteway had been moved to Brixton Prison, awaiting trial for the sexual assault charges. Hannam continued his interrogation there.
I told you this already. I had a row with the wife and I didn't leave her until 11:30.
Was your wife's mother in when you left?
How the devil do I know? I don't go in the house. She hates me.
I see. I can tell you your wife's mother was there that night. And she insists your wife was in bed by 11 p.m.
Well, she is a bloody liar. I was with my wife at 11:30. We had a cup of tea on the back step.
Very well. We've spoken before about your shoes. Your crepe sole shoes.
Yeah?
You said you were wearing them on the night of the 31st of May. Is that correct?
I've already said so, ain't I?
So you were wearing those shoes?
Look, it's the same bloody questions. I've already told you.
Yes or no?
Yes.
I see. Did you ever get blood on either of them?
No.
Is there any reason at all why there might be bloodstains on them?
No.
Very well. I must tell you, Mr. Whiteway, your shoes have been examined. A scientific expert will say in court that one of them has been exposed to a great quantity of blood.
Well, if they're saying that, then they're liars. Ain't got no blood on them.
Hannam pretty well breaks him on that basis. So you were wearing those shoes, weren't you? They were also known as brothel creepers at the time. They were not something that respectable young men really wore.
They discovered traces of blood on Alfred Whiteway's shoes. And really, those traces of blood were crucial evidence.
He'd apparently washed them, but done nothing more than that.
There was enough to suggest that there was blood which had been washed, but there was enough to suggest that there were some stains.
Hannam had one more ace up his sleeve. He had the axe, examination of which showed the curve of the blade matched the head wounds suffered by Barbara and Christine. Hannam knew this would be enough to unsettle Whiteway further.
You're very fond of knives, aren't you, Mr. Whiteway?
I didn't kill them girls.
Axes, too. Anything sharp, is that not right?
Were you kidding about that blood being on my shoe?
No.
What a bloody mess.
According to Inspector Hannam, it was at this point that Whiteway finally cracked. He told police he could not control himself around women. He confessed to killing Barbara and Christine. On the 20th of August, he was charged with their murders. The 9-week-long investigation was at an end. Over 1,600 statements had been taken, and 2,000 telephone messages received. But the mistakes made by police at Kingston and the failure of Hannam's team to find the murder weapon undermined the case against Whiteway. It would all rest on the confession. Whiteway's trial began on the 26th of October 1953. The confession secured by Hannam became the battleground in court. Defense barrister Peter Rawlinson subjected the Chief Inspector to a grueling 2-day cross-examination. It was, in the words of one newspaper, the duel at the Old Bailey. Rawlinson accused Hannam of manufacturing Whiteway's statement and tricking the young man into signing it.
Whiteway said that he never made this statement. What happened was that he was given a set of sheets of paper. He was asked to sign them and told where to put his signature. But he's saying, in effect, that he was verbaled.
Verbaling is what is called noble cause corruption. If the police know, quote, know, unquote, that somebody has done something and there isn't the evidence to back it up, they don't think they're doing anything wrong by helping convict a man whom they know did it. And this would be perhaps sometimes planting a bit of evidence on them. In this case, it was just the verbal confession.
The whole defence was questioning the integrity of the admission of guilt that he made when he was confronted with the axe and the bloodstains on his shoe.
This line of defence that the prisoner has been verbal is not unique. What sometimes happens is that the prisoner makes a statement, not realising the full significance of everything he or she is saying. And it's only when this has been pointed out to them by their solicitor or defence counsel that then they come up with their defence, this is a false confession.
Police interviews were not recorded at this time. The only evidence to corroborate Whiteway's confession was Hannam's notebook and those of the other officers present. This was standard practice. It was not until 1991 that tape recording of interviews by British police became the norm. Hannam, of course, denied Rawlinson's accusations. He called the suggestion of police misconduct terrible and absolutely untrue. The judge and many onlookers criticized Rawlinson's approach.
There was nothing else that Rawlinson really had to work on. He couldn't stand up and say, my character is a pillar of the community. So the only thing you can do is discredit the police case. And that is what Rawlinson does his best to do. And actually, by all accounts, did a pretty good job.
Jury was out, 45 minutes, I think, under the hour. And one of the interesting things is they sent in a question saying, when Hannam produced the axe, how long did he have it on the table before Whiteway? And when Whiteway signed the confession, had he still got it on the table? Presumably because that would have intimidated Whiteway. But if he'd put the axe away, then there was nothing for Whiteway to be scared about.
What undermined the effectiveness of that part of the defence was that Alfie was such a bad lot, and so clearly such a bad lot, that the jury overlooked what otherwise, in another case, could have brought the prosecution case crashing down.
At the end of the 6-day trial, they found Whiteway guilty. He was sentenced to death. Following the trial, there was outcry over the tactics of the defense. For many, questioning the word of a police officer was beyond the pale. But in decades to come, the skepticism expressed by Rawlinson in court would spread. Bribery and corruption scandals engulfed elements of the London police in the 1970s. Internal investigations discovered police profiting from crime they were meant to be preventing. Officers took bribes, ensured charges against guilty men were dropped, and fabricated evidence against the innocent.
His appeal was not successful. The only grounds for appeal in the English criminal justice system is that the law has in some ways not been properly followed through, that the case has been improperly handled, that evidence has been suppressed. Rawlinson's appeal was on the basis, it had to be on the basis, not that the jury was mistaken, but that the confession was forced out of him. It's actually perfectly possible that that is the case, but it was held by the court, by Lord Chief Justice Goddard, that there wasn't grounds for an appeal.
There was no general outcry as there was, for example, with Ruth Ellis and other cases. No, he was not regarded with any sympathy at all. And if he's convicted of 2 rapes and murders of girls, and the other rape and the attempted rape were left on the file, there's not a lot of room for sympathy.
Whiteway was not innocent. He was a violent sex attacker. Had he not been caught, he would certainly have assaulted and possibly killed others. But we will never know whether he confessed to the murders of Barbara and Christine in the way police claimed. Alfred Whiteway hanged on the 22nd of December 1953. A few years later, after his retirement from Scotland Yard, Bert Hannam had advice for his former colleagues. Police, he said, should have the courage to do things the law forbids. What mattered to Hannam was seeing justice done, however it was reached. But no justice can truly compensate for 2 teenage girls who left home one Sunday morning with all their lives ahead of them and never returned.